then I'll bring them.
Okay, great. There you are. And just make sure you see both of us, I guess.
Yeah, grand. So maybe we should start off with some introductions. My name is Warren Matofsky. I'm the principal clinical psychologist for West Sussex CAMHS, and I'm really pleased to be joined by my colleague from Yale.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Ellie Lebowitz. I'm at the Yale Child Study Center, where I oversee the program for anxiety and mood disorders.
Yeah, and I first got in touch with you about 5 years ago, Ellie, when we were developing our program in Sussex, using some of your research and the research from Chaim Omer at Tel Aviv University. And when we've been running this program, and we've mainly been running it live in the room, and from next year we're going to be running it remotely, we've always wanted to recommend a book to parents that's sort of consistent with the main principles of the program. And as I said to you before, we couldn't really find one. So that's why I'm really pleased that your book is coming out in 2021 in the UK. And I wondered if you could just say a bit about maybe your reasons for writing this book and some of the points that are in there.
Well, thank you. Thanks for really your enduring interest over this time. And I'm actually really excited about this book coming out because it is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. We developed SPACE, or supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions, as an entirely parent-based treatment for child anxiety and for obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, in children and in adolescents. And we've been doing clinical trial research, really establishing the efficacy of this program. And there have been resources for professionals, including books and journal articles and things like that. But I've really been motivated for a long time to try to bring this to parents in as direct and accessible and readable a way as possible, because not every parent is going to have easy access to a skilled and trained mental health provider in their area. And many parents reach out and they're really just asking for guidance. How can I work through a program like this on my own? And that's really been the motivation for writing this book. And so this book, Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD, is really a step-by-step guide to implementing the principles and the steps of SPACE for treating anxiety and OCD in kids on your own. And my hope is that a parent would be able to read this book and really make those changes in their own behavior that are going to help their child to overcome this problem. So I'm really excited that this is coming out now.
And I'm really pleased to be able to share this with parents coming into our program. It's really kind of well structured. There's worksheets so people can work out their kind of personalized goals. And I think, as you say, it's very accessible. I wanted to ask you something that parents often say to us is, my child has an anxiety problem. OCD is getting in the way of my child's life. Why do you need to see us? Why don't you just kind of work with them? And I wonder if you could say, a little bit about why the focus is on parents and carers.
Well, it's a really great question. And let me actually start by first saying what is not the reason that we want to work with parents, because I think a lot of people may make the wrong guess about this. And they may think that the reason that we want to work with parents is that we're actually suggesting that parents are the cause of these problems in the first place, that parents are really the reason that their child has anxiety or has OCD. And I really cannot say emphatically enough that that is simply not true, and it's not correct. Parents, in the vast majority of cases, are actually not the reason that their child has a mental health problem. And I say this so emphatically, in part, because I think we need to acknowledge that mental health as a field and as a discipline, whether that is psychology or psychiatry or social work, really the whole field, we have a rich history and a somewhat shameful history of blaming parents for their children's problems. And parents have really been blamed for every problem imaginable, whether that's autism or schizophrenia or anxiety or eating disorders or really anything. But time and again, empirical research actually fails to back up those theories, and it doesn't support those hypotheses. Of course, really problematic parenting in really bad ways can have a very detrimental impact on children's well-being. And so things like severe abuse and neglect, of course, those can be damaging to a child's well-being. But that is not the story for the vast majority of cases. So why do we want to work with parents? Well, because parents can actually be the solution to these problems. They may not have caused those problems in the first place, but they can be empowered to actually help their child overcome these challenges. And there is no better feeling, I think, than being the parent of a child who does have a challenge and being able to help them overcome it. And so that's one reason. Now, the second thing is that not every child is actually going to benefit from direct child therapy. There are evidence-based treatments for these problems, for anxiety and for OCD, that work directly with the child, like cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure and response prevention. These are frontline evidence-based treatments, but they are not effective in every case, and not every child is a great candidate for those treatments. Involving a child directly in therapy requires that the child have good insight into the problem. It requires that the child be motivated to collaborate on working on these therapies. And not every child is going to be willing to do that or able to. And some children may have communication, verbal problems, for example, that may mean that they're not ideal candidates, even if they wanted to be. And so having another tool in our arsenal, in our toolbox, to be able to overcome these problems by working with parents is actually a really critical and important resource. So we're not blaming parents for their children having the problems, but we are saying, and the evidence from research really backs this up, that parents can help their children to overcome these problems by making the kinds of changes that are described in this book.
Yeah. So, that's really helpful, a really clear message there that, parents can lead the change they want to see. They can kind of be guides to it. One more question really was about just the experience of parents using this program. Parents with a child with quite significant anxiety problems in their lives can often feel stuck. As you alluded to, they can, take on this idea that somehow it's their fault, even when it's not. They might blame themselves. They can feel tired. And obviously in this country, parents in the UK have the longest working hours in Europe, and often they can kind of feel stuck. And, I sometimes hear parents saying, oh, we've kind of tried everything, but I'm not sure what we can do because our child won't listen to us. So I wonder if you could just say a bit about that and how this approach, maybe focuses on a slightly different direction to some of the more traditional child anxiety workbooks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And first of all, it is so true. Being the parent of a child with anxiety or with OCD can be frustrating, it can be exasperating, and it can really be wearying and exhausting. And part of the reason for that is that parents naturally become very deeply entangled in their children's symptoms. When a child has anxiety, the most natural thing in the world is for that child to look to their parent to help them to feel better. And that's a very natural thing. And it's also a very natural thing for a parent to detect those cues of anxiety, to notice that their child is struggling, and to want to step in and help their child to feel better. Unfortunately, many times the things that we would do naturally to help a child feel less anxious actually tend to maintain anxiety over time. And so, for example, if you have a child who is socially anxious, they may struggle in social situations, and you may naturally want to step in and help them in those situations, maybe by speaking in place of them, for example. Or maybe your child has generalized anxiety and is chronically worried, and you may naturally step in and provide them with a lot of reassurance, answer all their worried questions, sometimes endlessly. Or maybe they have separation anxiety, and you may try to help them by being near them and not leaving them alone. And even though those are well-intentioned responses and very natural responses, those kinds of responses that we call accommodation of the child's anxiety, they actually tend to maintain the anxiety over time rather than reducing it. And so in this program, we're actually taking a different approach, which is very much centered around reducing those accommodations, but doing it in a systematic way and doing it in a loving, warm, and supportive way. And you mentioned something that's so important, which is parents may feel like, okay, you're trying to tell me things to make my child do, but that doesn't mean I can get my child to do them. And that is so true. Very often when we make a suggestion to parents and we tell them, you have to go home and get your child to practice this, or get your child to stop doing that, we may actually be setting them up for a really difficult situation where they may try to get their child to do that, but the child may resist. And then what we can actually have is a lot of conflict and escalation in that interaction, which ends up being frustrating for both and helpful to neither. What is really unique about this program, about SPACE, is that throughout the entire treatment process, we actually never ask a parent to make their child do anything. You don't need, and if you read this book, you will see that I stand behind this commitment 100%. You never have to make your child do anything. You don't have to get them to practice this skill or to stop doing that behavior that they're doing. The entire focus throughout the whole treatment is actually on changing the behavior of the one person that you do have control over. That's not your child, that's yourself. You can change only your own behavior. And by changing the way that you are responding to your child's anxiety without making any demands on them, you can actually treat these problems just as effectively as if you were to make your child practice a new skill or do something different. And so parents can really feel reassured that there will be no demands on them to make their child do something. And because of that, there's no need for that kind of conflict and frustration and escalation that may occur when you do try to force a change on your child.
Thank you, Ellie. I said that last one was going to be the last question. Just a quick one. I just wonder if you could just say the full name of the book, the publisher, and when we can be lucky enough to access it in the UK.
Absolutely. So the book is called Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD, a scientifically proven program for parents. It is published with Oxford Press, and it is already available for pre-order and will be shipping on January 2nd, so very soon.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you for your time.